Hi there, short film fans. I'm Nigel Morgan, and welcome to a special episode of the Cameo Launch Short Film Podcast. This is actually the first of a three-parter in which I sit down for an equal parts long and fascinating conversation with Emmeline Hartley of the Nexus Cast Crew Network. Before we get into that, if you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for short film reviews and filmmaker interviews. Remember to smash the bell for notifications of new uploads. If you're joining us from podcast land, don't forget to subscribe to our show by heading to cameolaunch.com/podcast, where you can listen to all of our episodes and subscribe on your favorite platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many more. For all you filmmakers out there, you can submit your film for consideration to be reviewed on our platform. If accepted, your film can be embedded to our review and shared via our newsletter and across all of our social media network. If your film is on the festival circuit, we won't include it to view for free, but you will have the option of making it available to viewers via rental for one weekend only, during which time you can collect rental revenue for your movie. Also, we've kind of buried the lead on this one because this October, Cameo Launch will be holding its very first in-person film festival. Head to Woking for the Surrey Short Film Festival, taking place on the 6th to the 8th of October at the award-winning Nova Cinema. There'll be showcases of short films made by female filmmakers and filmmakers from the LGBTQ+ community. There will also be short films exploring the stories from the African and Asian diasporas in the Western world, as well as student showcases, family-friendly showcases, the best in British short film, and so much more. Submissions are open now, so get your short film submitted today. Go to cameolaunch.com/submit or filmfreeway.com/shortfilmfestival to find out more. Now, for a bit of context to this week's episode, Nexus Cast Crew Network is a film and TV networking organisation based in the Midlands, and they have been connecting filmmakers of all disciplines as well as actors from around the UK since 2014, facilitating industry panels, networking, showcases, and a ton of other film-focused events. In early May this year, in fact on Coronation Day, Nexus held an East versus West Midlands showdown in which 5 short films from East Midlands filmmakers competed against 5 short films from West Midlands filmmakers to see who would take home the Midlands crown. That honour would ultimately end up going to the West Midlands via the short film In Too Deep from Academy Award-winning director Chris Overton. You can find our review of his Oscar-winning film The Silent Child and the film itself by heading to cameolaunch.com/reviews. Now, as we mentioned, this is a 3-part episode, and the episodes to come will dive into a short film that Emmeline co-wrote, co-produced, and co-starred in, a drama about sexual consent entitled Keep Breathing. They will also discuss how Keep Breathing's journey to the screen challenges the long-held and potentially outdated belief that there is no money in short film. This episode, however, we will be talking about Nexus, why it was created, and what that indicates about the current state of not just short film, but cinema as a whole in the UK. Listen and enjoy. Emmeline, thank you so much for joining us. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. It was a really good weekend, still winding down from the excitement.
Very much the same. I'm still quite buzzed from the event itself. Anyone that's following us on social media will know that we were like, "Oh my god, it was so amazing!" But it was genuinely a really, really well thought out, well conceptualized, just high energy event that I think everybody really, really enjoyed. The way it was kind of set up was kind of a sort of friendly rivalry between East and West type thing, but it was also very much in practicality, a celebration of the kind of talent that is within the Midlands region, and the selection of films that were the finest that were competing, that were screened that day, were just outstanding films. So firstly, congratulations to you and to the other organisers for doing that. How are you all feeling post event?
Yeah, I think we've not even had the chance to catch up, to be honest. But I think we're all feeling pretty pleased with ourselves and how it's gone. As you say, the film selection, we were really proud of that program. It was always going to be about quality for us. We had 10 really great films in the lineup, and to be honest, we were only really expecting to maybe program 6 or 8. Like, we weren't really trying to cram loads in there. We just wanted a really top quality program. So the fact that we got a lot and a really great variety, a mix between, live action, animation, fiction, non-fiction, experimental, and kind of arty, and then sort of drama, bit of comedy in there, some horror in there. Like, it was really, really great. We were very proud of the program, so I'm thrilled that everybody seemed to enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it speaks to the atmosphere of sort of artistic collaboration that has really characterized filmmaking in the Midlands as a whole. I think we have a tendency to look at how few resources and how little financial support there is for grassroots filmmaking, for short film in particular, and there's kind of a not necessarily an assumption, but an idea that other regions get more support than the region that we're in. Where the reality basically is no one's really got any money and no one's really got much by way of support. But something like this shows a sort of get up and go spirit that has to exist in an environment like that. And I think that kind of speaks back to some of the reason why you set up Nexus in the first place. Can you take us back to sort of the origins of that and what kind of prompted you to
Yeah.
set Nexus
I
up?
mean, I can't take credit for setting it up, even though I regularly do. I can't actually. So that was Tim Smith from the Actors Workshop, Nottingham. He's been running the Actors Workshop for like, God, 15 years nearly, maybe. I don't know now.
I was in the first cohort of actors
Were
when
you?
I was,
Oh, so
yes.
that's how it all links together. That's how he knows you and how I know you now.
Yeah. Well, me and Tim go back further than that, but yes, that
Oh,
was
right.
quite a
Okay.
first thing.
Yeah. Well, oh, were you at the
Yeah.
television workshop with Tim?
No, no. I met Tim after that. We met in 2006. He was recommended to me by somebody who I needed a bit of production support with on a video job, and he goes, "Oh yeah, my friend Tim, he's really really good." So he jumped in the car with me and another one of my friends, Nathan, and we went on a bit of a road trip to London to film a gospel concert. So
Oh, right. Who knew?
that's, yeah, that's
Fair.
back as far as that.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
No.
hey Tim, hope all's
Yeah.
good.
Hi, Tim. Talking about you, not to you. But no, yeah, Tim's great. He like so he has all of these amazing actors at the workshop and is always trying to find opportunities for them and find opportunities to link them with local filmmakers and artists. And he and Miguel Alves Khan came up with the idea to set up the event, and it was at Antenna in Nottingham, and it was monthly. And I went to it. I think it was the first 3 times I went to it that it was brilliant. Like the guests that they had coming to do like Q&A panels, and like the room itself, the venue, the atmosphere, everything was amazing, except there just wasn't many people there. And I just sort of said to them after a few events, like, what is going on? Like, why isn't there anyone here? And they were like, well, we need some help with the marketing actually. And I was just like, I'll do it. I was like, I have no experience and I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I'm sure I can help people to get there and take that burden off you for a bit. So I did. And the following event, we had 65 people come. Um,
Nice.
and sort of we did a bit, I did a bit of the like branding and posters and things like that, and shouted about it on social media and at local universities. And then we kind of had around 70 odd at every event after that. And then 8 months down the line, I think we had the amazing Rachel Roby from Wellington Films coming to do a Q&A. And Tim contacted me about an hour before the Q&A was due to start and was like, I can't make it, something's come up, I'm so sorry, can you host the Q&A? And I was just like, no, I mean, yes, I will, but I don't know if you'll call it hosting. He was like, great, I'll send you the questions. And I was sat there and I hadn't had the chance to do any research at all. And I was kind of bumbling, awkward, frantic, like didn't know what I was doing. And that remains my hosting style today. So, because people seem to like it.
Turned it into a
Um,
fine art.
yeah, so that's me. But yeah, no, so I've continued sort of I then carried on hosting them after that, whether we were hosting them together or whether it was just me. And then eventually I sort of took over and started actually organising them all as well. And then over the years, we've had amazing like teams of volunteers all coming together. Like we've all been putting everything into it for free. And it's been run by several people as well, like Chloe Martin, who's a producer in Nottingham. She was running it for a bit with us. Ryan Harvey was a big sort of lead in that sort of the creative turn that it took. They were there when East versus West Midlands Showcase was conceptualized back in 2020, I think. And then now Camille Burnett, who you met on Saturday, and Poppy Abbott, we all run it together now.
Brilliant.
At the moment. So we're in a season of change. So where it was a monthly event in Nottingham previously, it's now kind of as and when we have the funds to do it, because it's a bit harder now, and across the whole Midlands region. Like it's really important to us that we include the West as well, especially because I live here now in Birmingham. So yeah, and it occurred to me, having lived in both, that both of them are constantly saying, well, we in the East, we don't get any money, like the West gets it all. And then in the West, it's like, we don't get any money, the East gets it all. And the East are like, it's always in Birmingham, and the West is like, it's always in Nottingham. And I was just like, guys, it's not anywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, the North and like the London and Southeast seem to get a lot of opportunities. I don't know if that's true, but it feels like it's disproportionate, like from the whole Midlands to the rest of the UK. I don't know, like I've not seen all the figures for that, but that's I have spoken to people in different organisations across the UK that have kind of confirmed a narrative that's similar to that. And when you go down to London, I went to an audition and they were like, oh, where have you travelled from? The people in the waiting room. And I was like, oh, Birmingham. And they're like, oh God, why would you live in the North? I'm like, I don't. I live in the Midlands. There's a whole massive band of country that you've missed. Why are we so invisible? So I thought, well, we need to unite the whole Midlands, both the East and West regions, so that everyone can meet each other and we can put the Midlands back on the map. But the only way we're going to get everyone in a room together is if we pit them against each other, because they love it.
Everyone loves East versus West beef. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that that ends up being the origin story of the Midland Showcase and of Nexus as a whole, because it kind of speaks to the state of grassroots filmmaking UK wide. I mean, you mentioned, it seems like the Southeast and the North get more funding than the Midlands. I would probably imagine that if you spoke to a filmmaker in Liverpool, they'd be looking at places like Birmingham with envious eyes in terms of funding, of the kind of funding that's available. Because ultimately, you end up having a lot of filmmakers across the country all kind of vying for the same pot of money. And it's all very centrally controlled, even though it's technically passed out to film hubs in different regions of the country. It's still a very limited pot for a lot of creative people. And it then kind of carries over, not just from short film or just general projects, but into feature film as well. What are your thoughts in terms of what the landscape is like now in terms of providing opportunity for people who actually do manage to move through short film into feature film, and the kind of opportunities there are for them in terms of actually getting an opportunity to make something which ends up in front of an audience in a cinema, with the kind of regularity that allows them to make a living from it? I mean, how realistic is that as a goal? How common is that as an occurrence in your experience?
To be honest, there are so many sort of schemes in place that are trying to prepare people for their first feature and for that transition. BFI and Channel 4 obviously had Future Takes, which is a new fund that was open at the beginning of the year for sort of short films of higher end sort of value of up to 90k, which was supposed to kind of be that, like, help that transition between short and long form, because you're working with a much higher budget and able to do a lot more with it. But ultimately, as someone who's been looking to kind of make that transition for a while now, I don't really feel like there's much opportunity, because at the end of the day, the people that are making all the decisions, especially if you're going down a public funding route, are people that at this level I still can't get in the room with or get meetings with. I mean, even through Nexus, like I can't even sit down with the BFI and be like, look, this is what we're doing, this is why it's important, can you help us? I've tried to no end. And then to finance something privately, um, there's too much risk, and when you don't have a safety net, um, you know, if you don't have any money, you don't have a safety net, you don't have um, endless hours that you can put in for free for years, then trying to go down that sort of private financing route is also a barrier, unless you're someone with loads of like contacts, loads of money, people willing to invest just at your fingertips, which the majority of us on the ground are not. So yeah, it's tough. We're trying to set up with Nexus a mentoring sort of program to help with that kind of transition, and also for people coming into the industry later on in life, because there's a lot of schemes for sort of 18 to 25-year-olds, mostly around short filmmaking, to be fair. But I mean, ultimately, we need to hear more from these huge, streamers like Netflix and Apple TV, and the work that they are making now. That's where your high end work is.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't have short film corners on these streaming platforms, because everybody wants to watch short film content. Given, we all sit and watch Inside Number 9 and Modern Love and other anthologies like that when we need something just quick and short and easy before we go to bed or whatever. So if we're all looking for those kinds of things, then why is there not more short film corners? Because if there were, then there would be more money to be able to
make them, yeah.
take that to go into a bigger project. That would help to bridge that gap a bit. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense why those big sort of broadcasters and live streamers aren't getting involved.
Yeah, I mean, the as you all know, the landscape for filmmaking has been changing dramatically. I mean, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of Hollywood has essentially been paralyzed by the writer's strike, which is largely being driven by the ways in which things are changing, the way writers are compensated through creating content for streaming, and now obviously AI is getting involved in the mix as well. Whereas here, I think writing is very much a gig economy type career in the UK, and I think that's what they're trying to avoid with the writer's strike in America. But yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned, there are numerous examples of those big streamers looking for ways to produce short form content. You gave a couple of really good examples. There's also solos and Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities and stuff like that. Because of the fact that there is so much potential variety, is there a danger of there just being too many options and the approach to the content creation and therefore the funding of it just being a bit too scattershot to actually build something solid that creates a career path for filmmakers, you think?
I don't know. I think the fact that there's so many different options could be really helpful. It's just right now it isn't. And so I know that there's always kind of like, oh, when you're pitching an idea to a streamer or to a platform broadcaster, whatever company, make sure it fits within their scope. And sometimes the scope is so broad and so wide that it's difficult to kind of narrow that pitch a little bit. But on the other hand, sometimes by having so many, it's really helpful to kind of know exactly where it fits as well. It depends on the project, obviously. But that does mean that the project has to be very, very specific as well. I don't know. Having not done it yet, I can't fully comment on that experience, whether that's helpful or not. I know that it has the potential to be what makes that transition easier, but at the moment it doesn't. So yeah, it's a shame that we don't sort of hear more from those big organizations, because like, I don't know, they feel like very much closed shop. You can't you can't send any unsolicited material. You can't even really send unsolicited emails. Like they don't even have emails kind of publicly available for the people that are working up top. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just all very secretive, and unless you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds really obvious, but yeah, it's just a big
Yeah.
closed door, it feels.
Yeah. Do you think then that kind of examine it from the flip side? Then, do you think that then opens up opportunities for organisations like Nexus to provide opportunities that these big streamers and bigger companies can't or won't provide? Just in terms of what we were saying before, this is a grassroots environment, and in the absence of um, funding, in the absence of industry support, people adopt a kind of a can-do attitude in terms of the kind of stories they tell, and also the level of quality with which they tell them as well. So do you think there are certain advantages that people have in terms of connecting through organizations like Nexus that they might not have if they were having to go through the process of applying to an Apple TV or a Amazon Prime or a Netflix?
No.
Mm.
Nexus is the answer. Nexus only exists because over the years so many people have given up their time for free. We're still not being paid properly to run Nexus in any way, shape or form. Like we've only just been able to start paying ourselves literally a tiny amount. Now I'm going to be really, really transparent. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be, but myself, Camille and Poppy running East versus West Midlands Showcase, which includes all of the social media call outs and everything to get people to submit the films, all of the watching the films, all of the kind of programming them, getting all of the assets, all of the marketing, all of the, liaising with the filmmakers, working with the venue, organizing everything, and then reorganizing everything when we had to cancel the last event when it was originally arranged because of the snow day. Everything, all of us, the three of us, have been paid £200 each. And then, oh yeah, and hosting it on the day and everything. That's what we're being paid to do it, and the amount of hours of work that it's cost all of us it far exceeds, like it'll be less than half of minimum wage probably ultimately by the time you've sort of worked it all out. Um, that's just to be really transparent, and that is after like we've done so much to try and get in touch with organizations for funding. BFI Network have been very, very helpful. Yourselves have been very helpful in supporting us. The Quad were brilliant. They gave us everything like for free pretty much, as a collaboration. Like we collaborated with them and we went through the idea with them, and like they were brilliant. So we do have partners supporting us, but nobody actually has any money, actual money to really make sure that the people on the ground are getting paid. The only reason that it's all happened is because it's something that we're really, really passionate about. But I can't tell you how many times, how many events I've ended up out of pocket and paying for stuff myself. I mean, in fact, we ran over budget on that. We need to just work out a way to string it back, because obviously there's no room for errors, which ultimately get made. We had these award certificates printed at the wrong side, which cost us £8. Do you know what I mean? So it's just little things like that. But so having gone to, I keep trying to speak to BAFTA, to BFI, to the big organizations, to Arts Council, like that, to try and get sort of funds for this. A lot of project funds don't fund business as usual. They only fund a new project, which, when we're not even being funded for what we do anyway, to then come up with a new project is like more work. But we have done that. We've done that with our Arts Council bid. But it just means, we get the new project, great, but the rest of Nexus can't run or function. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so hard, and Nexus has nearly disintegrated and gone down the toilet 3 times now. 3 times where I've been like, I can't do this anymore, I'm packing it up. And then something has happened, or someone's given me hope again to try again. We've incorporated it as a community interest company now to try and access other funds. But still, it's just application after application after application, hours and hours and hours down the pan for no, like, not being paid to do it, and we're not getting anywhere. People need Nexus. Like every time it does stop, we get just so many messages, not just from the community that come to the events, but also from organizations who, you know, signpost people to our events saying, where are you? What's going on? Like, you know, we need you. When's the next event? Like, you know, we're excited. And it's just like, there isn't going to be one. We're done. And then like the response to that is just like, oh, okay, right. We can't be done then. There must be a way. There must be a way. It's so ridiculous. Like, we've proved time and time again that we're needed. That people need us, that, like, you know, the things that have come from it, the collaborations that have come out of it, and, you know, it's valuable, and yet we're still here, you know, not being paid, with no money. So, you know, as it is, we've had to stop running monthly. Um, so it's just, yeah, that's the sad truth of it. So no, I mean, we're still getting doors slammed in our face. Stephen Knight, who's doing his, I'm being really, really honest here. This is like very, very
Please do,
transparent.
please do.
Yeah,
This is important.
the
This is
brutal
important. I'll tell you
truth.
why it's important, because the very fact that you just outlined everything that you've had to put up with, all of the doors being slammed in your face, the lack of funding, the fact that doing all of this more often than not costs you money rather than makes you money, all that kind of stuff, and you're still here. Number one, it speaks to your genuine dedication to the cause and that of the people that you're working with as well. Um, and number two, it speaks to the fact that when people then do inquire, when's the next event, what's going on with you guys, that you are actually providing those networks and you are actually making a dent and you are actually making a difference. Obviously, you can't live on goodwill and fresh air, so it needs to be income generating in some way, shape, or form, and people need to know that. You know, it can't just, these things don't just happen, they don't just materialize as resources that people can just access anytime. They have to be funded in some way, shape, or form. And I think it really does speak to the overall landscape of UK filmmaking. That there doesn't really seem to be, not even just in terms of funding, but just in terms of outlet. You know, if you're talking about being able to progress to feature film stage and, you know, try and get something funded to try and get it out there, you know, take a short trip to your nearest cinema and see how many films are being played and how many of them come from the sources that these filmmakers come from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you know, on that note, you know, every time I see a new actor come up through the ranks, like on film or TV or whatever, who kind of similar demographic to me in a role that I would see myself playing, I always look them up afterwards, and they always come from one of three things. Either they were privately educated, their parents or family were in the business, or they actually started as a child, or usually it's a combination of those three things. It's never kind of from the same roots as myself, which is very frustrating and doesn't really give you kind of an angle in. But yeah, on the note of just, you know, doors being slammed in faces, Stephen Knight, I don't know if he has any awareness that this is happening, because I mean, I couldn't even access him to speak to him directly. Um, he's obviously been in the press a lot lately because he's opening the Digbeth Lock Studios and doing loads of stuff in Birmingham to try and, you know, get bring content to Birmingham. And in the press, it's kind of going on about how he's championing emerging talent and trying to do this to bring emerging talent on board these productions and give them like a kickstart and stuff like that. And I reached out to him and his PA and said, look, hey, you know, well, actually, the first thing I said was, hey, we're launching this event in Birmingham. This is when we had our very first sort of West Midlands live in-person event with Nexus. I was like, can you, could Stephen come and like join us for that event? Like, it will help us to get loads of people through the door and get the word out better. But also, you know, people would love to hear from Stephen about how the landscape in Birmingham's changing and be able to walk away with that optimism and know how they can tap into that. And then got a response just saying he's busy, sorry. Like, he can't possibly attend every event he gets invited to. There's too many. And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, okay, fine, fair enough. But I said, can I at least just have 10 minutes with you on a Zoom call? This was to the PA or I don't know. I think someone said that she was his PA. I don't actually know what her job role is, but I said, can I sit down with you just for 10 minutes to explain who we are and what we do, and just make sure that we're on your radar, because we clearly have the same goals in mind. You're talking about nurturing emerging talent, and we have access to that emerging talent after the many years of work that we've done on the ground supporting that emerging talent and speaking to them on a day-to-day basis. So like, is there a way that we can have a chat, and I can let you know a little bit about that? And she just said, speak to Create Central. Create Central are amazing. Okay, they're great. Everything that they're doing for the West Midlands region is brilliant. We have been in touch with them for a long period of time already, and you know that they don't have pots, like buckets and buckets of money, or you know, anything to sort of support us in the way that we need, you know, from scratch, from nothing. They have supported us. We've partnered with them for an event before, which was immensely successful, and it was really great working with them. I hope there's more opportunities like that. In fact, yeah, that little collaboration, I think, that we did do with Create Central sort of came from that moment. And I really hope that there's more in the future, because it was great. But that door just felt like it was slammed in our face. The truth is, you know, she's probably up to her eyes in it with requests like this all the time. How does one filter that? And Stephen probably has absolutely no idea that we're here and we were trying to hammer on that door. You know, people on the ground in the Midlands know what Nexus is, but beyond that, no one does. And when I'm trying to be like, we're here, we can help, we can support, we're doing all this work, nobody's listening.
Yeah, it's hard to rise above the noise, I guess. There'll be obviously a lot of people trying to get projects off the ground and get things made, but there'll also be lots of little networks up and down the country to trying to accomplish largely the same thing. And as long as they're fragmented, there's only so far any one of them will be able to go. Nexus, I think, as a concept, has legs, not just because of the fact that you're merging two regions, i.e., East and West Midlands, but also because that's being done alongside the presentation of the actual work being created by the creatives within that network. And that is something that can then be translated into the general entertainment landscape, as long as it's kind of promoted properly and as long as it has a platform. But in its earliest stages, you're right, it needs that support, and it needs that recognition and shout outs. Is one of the reasons why we were so happy to be able to support it. But you know, you're going to need bigger voices than ours. I mean, we can keep shouting about Nexus until the cows come home, and we will. But you know, other people need to get involved with organisations like this, particularly on the grassroots level, because those are where a lot of the most interesting stories are being told. It's where the sort of, not wanting to generalise, but some of the purest forms of filmmaking kind of take place, because you know, you've got people that are inspired by just the concept of being able to make a film, and marry that with the broad variety of intricacies of everyday life in the UK. And what comes out of that is some amazing stuff. Case in point, the winner of the overall Midlands Award, Chris Overton, who is also an Academy Award winner. And yet, you know, he's engaging with Nexus. He recognises the value of a network like that and of a showcase like the Midland Showcase that you held. And what struck me is that during sort of the pitch up session, you know, he was reaching out and trying to make contact with people that might be able to help with his feature, in the same way that a lot of people that haven't accomplished what he's accomplished are reaching out and trying to make those very same connections. So, you know, even when you have the kind of success that he's had, if you're still in this landscape, the options are still very close to you, even as an Academy Award winner. You know, and that's an interesting kind of observation to kind of have to deal with. And how do you move past that, and how do you kind of resolve that issue?
Yeah, exactly. It just goes to show, doesn't it? But I mean, you know, we were so happy that Chris was there, and just like Chris, loads of filmmakers who are kind of moving on from shorts, and sort of moving up in that world and finding those doors that they can push open and stuff, they still keep coming back to Nexus, which is awesome, because obviously that's what helps the other filmmakers at Nexus and artists to be able to stay connected with that sort of longer ladder, if you like. And I hope that the longer that we're here, the more that those kind of connections can be facilitated to sort of help everyone. It's like pulling everyone up a cliff, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he's an example of your rising tide that lifts all ships. Really, I mean, with the kind of success he's had, it does bring a certain amount of, for want of a better word, does bring a certain amount of legitimacy to the network and to the organization and to the event. But also, it kind of underscores the fact that we all need help and we all need to be connected to each other, irrespective of the levels of success that we may have previously had. And it creates the kind of environment which encourages people to do that, which is fantastic. And I think Nexus deserves all the champions it can get its hands on.
I will say though, actually, on that sort of note of Nexus and the struggles that we faced, it's even the huge film festivals that we all know and love, BAFTA qualifying, BIFA qualifying, Academy Award qualifying film festivals are struggling right now. I know numerous examples that I'm not going to sort of start naming, because uh, I don't know what information is privileged or not, but like whenever we're trying to sort of partner with festivals and stuff, like we hear the same story back from them, that it's every single year is a struggle to find the sponsors, to find the funding, to find the the way forward. And you've seen it literally with the collapse of Edinburgh Film Festival, and I think there's been a couple of others, and I don't know when these are sort of BAFTA, BIFA, Academy Award qualifying, what are those bodies doing to help, like, and also can they help them to nurture emerging talent a little bit more? Like there are festivals that are charging £140 a submission fee for a short film that are sort of BAFTA, BIFA qualifying and stuff. Like, is there something like they're having to do that because they cannot afford to run without that? But like that completely closes off any accessibility to filmmakers that kind of are having to come from nothing and don't have that money already. This is why I think, what was it? What was the ratio? It was something like 5% of the UK are privately educated, but like 40% of the film industry are, or it was something like that, which just kind of shows the scale of the problem in terms of accessibility and coming from lower socioeconomic background and not having that safety net. Again, I come back to that because there's no real way forward. And in fact, an example that I give in terms of accessibility, which is accessibility is such an issue, and like yes, we feel like we're constantly addressing it and talking about it, but actually, like a lot isn't really changing. If you want to become a producer for high-end TV, as an example, there's kind of two routes in which you can do that. Either you start at the bottom and work your way up in TV, working from a runner to production assistant, production secretary, coordinator, manager, line producer, whatever, working your way up that sort of production ladder in high-end TV. Or you kind of start at by producing short films for no budget and then scaling up that project each time. But like if you are, for example, disabled, neurodivergent from a lower socioeconomic background, like moi, then to go like the kind of working your way up through the production ranks on high-end TV in that sort of way, that's not accessible to me on a kind of a disability access level, in terms of the ridiculous sort of lengths of hours, the fact that you need to be able to drive, the kind of the stress that kind of adds on, which exonerates those problems, and then the kind of scaling up the film sort of level. If you don't have any money, or that safety net that I keep kind of referencing, then that kind of becomes a real problem as well. And it's completely eaten me alive, the amount of debt that I'm in now, because like of that kind of lifestyle. And that's after working 120 hours a week pretty much solidly for the last 10 years. and sacrificing every single part of my life to be able to do that. So that I'm working obviously like full-time jobs to try and keep a roof over my head, and those are mostly sort of minimum wage. And then on top of that, all of the career stuff that's being done for free, and then having to spend the money, like big portions of the money that I'm earning from minimum wage jobs, on, you know, extra courses, travel to get to events, the events themselves for like networking, equipment, and, you know, trying to pay people, like pay, you know, all of the time that it takes to sort of do crowdfunders, and like having to pay for like a location or whatever to film the crowdfunding video. I mean, I've not actually ever paid for that, to be fair, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
it all
Mm.
kind of just adds up, and
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
constantly asking people for favors. Like, it just doesn't end. So when you're kind of then from, you know, like disadvantaged sort of backgrounds, especially sort of in that intersectional sort of um demographic where they intersect, then you kind of, how do you get forward?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it does seem like an unscalable mountain, and I think part of the problem is we keep looking at what's there and trying to play by its rules. Um, and just off the basis of what you've just described, that's not sustainable for anybody. Anybody, you know, much less people that have specific circumstances which makes life difficult. You know, you in no other profession would you be expected to work this hard for this little, and not in just in terms of what you make, but what you have to pay to do it. No other profession would or associated profession, I should say, because you know there are other areas and crafts like, you know, music or acting, which are tangential to film, which I think have very similar paths and would probably have a lot of people with similar stories. But I think basically what it comes back down to is the outlets themselves, because ultimately you've got your streamers, but you also have cinemas. And call me old fashioned, but I still believe that everything kind of stems from cinema. If you're talking about your premium streaming content, there will be some kind of connection to cinema which legitimizes that content, which makes it premium, which makes it the thing that people are signing up to that particular streaming service to watch. Um, and it's in those areas which the UK has very little access within UK cinema. And that basically filters down because ultimately, if there's no outlet through which income is generated, then there's no way for an investor, for example, to see how they can get a return on an investment in any given project or slate of projects. The only things you can really rely on are those groups of people who have backing from those established bodies, usually not UK based, usually US or specifically Hollywood based, that ultimately decide what of the UK's content they're going to pick. And generally that comes from, as you just mentioned, you know, 40% of people working in the industry come from privately educated backgrounds, when that represents a tiny amount of the actual population itself. So what you then end up getting are people largely people trying to tell stories which don't get picked up because it's not in the background of the people who decide what then goes up to the big streamers ultimately, or what gets pitched to the big streamers. It will be very much based in what they think they can sell to it. Whereas if there was some kind of outlet within cinema, within UK cinema specifically, for UK film, that immediately creates income generating opportunities for people who fund those films, and thus income generating opportunities for people who make those films. And that would open up things a lot. In my opinion, that would open up things a lot for people taking either one of the routes you just mentioned, be it working your way up from runner to line producer to producer to whatever, or scaling up your own personal projects, which at the beginning you would be, you know, trying to fund yourself. But once you've kind of gotten to a stage where your level of craft is evident, and the kind of stories you're trying to tell are really, really connecting with the people that do see your work, that in and of itself should be enough to get someone to go, we could turn the kind of films this person's making into something really, really great and actually put it in front of an audience who'll really connect with it. If there's no outlet, then there's no means to make money. And with no focus on the outlet, then there's no means by which people in your position or the position of a lot of the guys who went to your event can reasonably expect to move up.
Like on that note, like something that I think you and I spoke about once before was how amazing it was when our film, a short film, Keep Breathing, was shown at Derby Quad for the Derby Film Festival. They put our short film in front of a feature film, which was System Crasher, which is incredible. And what that meant was the audience that then watched that short film were not a usual short film audience. And like if we do that more often, and therefore we're reaching out to audiences who are not like they're regular cinema goers and not normal sort of short film audiences, if you like, that would then help to sort of start normalizing short films, which then would trickle onto those sort of streaming services, which then also then becomes more sort of monetized, and then that sort of monetization then comes back to those emerging filmmakers, which then helps do you know what I mean? Like it kind of seems obvious. What are we doing?
You monetize it at the fundamental level, which actually creates opportunities for people making it because
And
people
then
are clearly connecting with it.
people paying for a cinema ticket as well are getting more for their
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to take away the trailers and adverts and things like that. I'm saying that if we extend every cinema run by just 15 minutes when they're already like 2 or 3 hours long, like what difference does that make? Just add a toilet break, for God's sake. Like
Yeah, but yes, you mentioning Keep Breathing set up the segue perfectly. Keep Breathing is the most recently reviewed film on our platform. As you're listening, you should be able to look at that review and watch the film now. But for a bit of background, Emmeline, can you tell us a little bit about what Keep Breathing is about and the topics it addresses?
So a woman who's at work, as she's leaving work in the elevator, she gets stuck in a lift with a man who's just finished fixing it, or not, obviously, as it transpires. And then sort of she's quickly sort of recognized him and realized that he's the guy that she'd had a one-night stand with a few weeks back after a night out. And they, on the night out, they'd got on really, really well, and you sort of see all the flashbacks of how that night kind of went, and then also how it ended. And it's kind of through a series of miscommunications and kind of luck pushing and disregard and neglect of her feelings that it kind of all went a bit wrong. And basically in the lift, she finally sort of tries to address it, and a big argument sort of breaks out.
We're going to have to leave our conversation on that cliffhanger, I'm afraid. Make sure you tune in for our next episode, in which we'll be discussing the issues around consent that inspired Keep Breathing, as well as its fascinating journey from script to screen. In the meantime, you can watch Keep Breathing and read our review by heading to cameolaunch.com/reviews. You can also get a heads up of all of our new reviews and interviews by heading to cameolaunch.com and subscribing to our newsletter. For updates on all things Cameo Launch and short film, you can follow us on the socials at Cameo Launch on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. All you filmmakers, don't forget to submit your film to feature as one of our reviews or to be screened at the Cameo Launch Surrey Short Film Festival this October. All links for more info are in the description. So our thanks to Emmeline for taking the time to talk to us today, our thanks to you all for tuning in, and our thanks to all of those incredible filmmakers out there who keep giving us amazing movie experiences to enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, come on back for our next episode. In the meantime, you all take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.